Chapter 2445. Nanston Kira waited expectantly. He hoped that the police would come to his cell and tell him, "You can come out now." But 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, he still couldn't wait for the news of his release. Damn it! Damn bastard, I knew it! I knew it was that damn Chinese who was playing with me. Nanston Kira suddenly became irritable. It was already 23 in the evening. Nanston Kira had already given up. By this time, the court had already closed. Boom! A loud sound came from behind Nanston Kira without warning. Nanston Kira was so scared that he curled up into a ball. Looking back, he found a big hole in the wall behind him. Vincent stood in the hole and looked at Nancy Kira in the cell from inside. "Professor Nanston, we should go." What's wrong with me? You want me to break out of prison?" "Hee, your bail is $13 million US. It's impossible for my boss to pay so much for you. And the money is bound to be confiscated. So you should hurry up now." The entire detention center was already ringing with alarms. Nanston Kira took a deep breath and finally took that step. "Where's your helper?" "Just me," Vincent said with a smile. "Are you crazy? You dare to break out of prison by yourself?" "I know what I'm doing," Vincent said disapprovingly. "Where does this lead?" "The sewers." In various movies and TV dramas, the sewers were always the golden passageway for prison breaks. However, Nanston Kira felt that Vincent was too reckless. He wasn't against illegal prison breaks. The key was whether he could be more meticulous, blow up the wall of the cell he was in, and escape through the sewers. Wasn't that too careless? Sure enough, after they entered the sewers, they heard footsteps behind them. The police in the detention center had obviously discovered that he had broken out of prison. This made Nanston Kira nervous. After all, no one liked to be caught right after breaking out of prison. His enemies would definitely find joy in his pain. "What should we do?" "Hurry up and think of a way. The police are coming from behind." Nancy pulled Vincent's arm nervously. He hoped that Vincent was actually joking with him. He hoped that Vincent actually had a very thorough plan. He actually had a lot of helpers. But to his disappointment, Vincent shook his head. "It doesn't matter. I can kill as many people as they come. This joke isn't funny." Vincent didn't care about Nancy Kira's thoughts. He just led the way. But the sounds of pursuit were getting closer and closer. Nancy also became more and more nervous. Nancy Kira looked back, and this glance almost made his soul leave his body. Searchlights were coming from the corner behind them. At this moment, Vincent suddenly stopped. Just then, Nancy Kira felt something wriggling in Vincent's arm. Nancy loosened his grip and saw a 2-meter-long sea snake crawling out of Vincent's sleeve. Frightened, Nancy watched the sea snake crawl towards the back. "Are you a magician?" Vincent glanced at Nancy Kira. "This isn't magic." Just then, a scream came from behind. "Sea snake! It's a sea snake! Damn it, kill it!" "Ah!" Bang, bang. Because it was on the other side of the corner, Nancy Kira didn't know what was going on behind him. Could it be that a sea serpent was enough to make the pursuing police panic? Wasn't this too strange? He even used a gun. Was that necessary? "Let's go faster," Vincent suddenly said. He had a feeling that if he didn't go faster, big trouble would come. He knew who had sent Nancy Kira to prison. It was that terrifying human. If the police told him that Nancy Kira had escaped from prison, then he definitely wouldn't sit back and do nothing. Vincent wasn't confident that he could escape from Chun Zhao again. Even his master said it. He didn't want to be enemies with that human. Just then, a rusty iron fence appeared in front of them. However, although the iron fence was rusty, it was still extremely strong. "Oh no, what do we do now? Do you want to go another way?" Nancy asked anxiously. Vincent stepped forward. He reached out with both hands and forcefully broke them. The 2 steel bars of the iron fence were directly broken. Nancy's mouth was wide open, her face full of astonishment. How did you do it? Do you want to stay here and investigate? Or do you want to leave this dirty sewer as soon as possible?" "Fine." After Nancy Kira stepped out of the fence, Vincent went up and bent the 2 steel bars back. Nancy was speechless. Could a human bend such a thick steel bar? This probably required thousands of kilograms of strength, right? Or was it because the iron fence had already rusted? Could he bend the steel bar with his bare hands because the strength had decreased? However, Nancy didn't have time to think so much. They had already reached the end of the sewer. The exit of the sewer was a river. Vincent had already prepared a small boat here. Just like that, Nancy Kira successfully escaped from prison and boarded the small boat. The small boat flowed downstream and entered the sea through the estuary. Nancy didn't expect their prison break to be so easy. Where are we going now? We'll go wherever this boat takes us. It was understandable that they were in the river before. But at this time, they had already entered the sea. The direction of the waves was uncertain. Who knew where they would go? But what made him feel strange was that he and Vincent clearly didn't control the boat. But the boat still kept drifting towards the open sea. Logically speaking, a small wooden boat like theirs should be constantly wandering back and forth near the sea without any power or anyone operating it. However, the boat was always heading in one direction. It felt like something was carrying them towards the open sea. Suddenly, a wave appeared on the surface of the sea. The boat no longer moved forward, but instead retreated a distance. At this time, a black iron well rose from the original position of the boat. A submarine? Nancy Kira cried out in surprise. Come on, let's go in. You prepared this? It's too dangerous on the surface of the sea. Hiding below makes me feel a little safer. 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. If he had known earlier, he would have taken care of this matter himself. At that time, he would have just twisted off Nancy Kira's head and kicked it like a ball. Of course, there was nothing in this world that was completely satisfactory. Just as he was feeling depressed, he received a call from Wright. Hey, darling, did you miss me? Chen, have you contacted Tiger recently? Tiger? What happened to him? Chen Zhao frowned. He hadn't contacted Tiger recently. He hadn't even paid attention to Tiger. You're really incompetent as a teacher. I've been busy recently. That can't cover up your negligence. Fine, I was wrong. Tiger's recent actions have already brought a lot of negative news to our school. It's even a scandal. That's serious. I heard that you introduced him to his agent. You can go ask him yourself. Fine, I'll contact you later. After hanging up, Chen Zhao called Del. Del. Chen, you've been back in L.A. for so long and you haven't come to hang out with me. You're too much. Can't you come if I don't go? Fine. Are you asking me out now? I want to ask about Tiger. You don't know? Know what? He already fired his agent from CAA. When did that happen? Chen Zhao asked, surprised. I don't know at all. Chen Zhao was the one who'd introduced Tiger to CAA. Del had been the middleman. After that, Tiger's performance became better and better. After that, Chen Zhao stopped paying attention to Tiger. He felt that Tiger didn't need too much attention anymore. Just 2 months ago. So you don't know how he's doing? No, I know, Del said. After all, he's a former client of CAA. We still pay attention to him. How's he been recently? Was he the one who lost the match in the arena? Or something? He's as good as always in the arena. Hearing that, Chen Zhao was even more surprised. If he was as good as always, why would Wright say that Tiger had embarrassed the school? What about other things? His current management company is SC. What's the problem? SC isn't good at business operations. They're good at controlling their clients. How? Drugs, women. These are the most common methods. He's been in contact with drugs? Chen Zhao was instantly infuriated. So far, he hasn't failed a urine test during his post-match medical examination. But recently, the media has been reporting on the people he's been in contact with. They're all gang members. There have even been news of prostitutes in his mansion. In Chen Zhao's memory, Tiger seemed to have a girlfriend. They'd only had a meal together at the beginning of last year. Chen Zhao knew that in the sports world, people would often lose themselves because they became famous overnight. The most famous example in the boxing world was Tyson. He'd once dominated the heavyweight boxing world. After he became rich, he started spending and indulging without restraint. The result was, of course, being beaten to a pulp in the arena by someone who had once defeated him. He left the boxing world and became even more extravagant. In the end, he went bankrupt. Chen Zhao didn't want Tiger to be like that. But some things wouldn't happen just because Chen Zhao didn't want them to. Tiger was his student, But Chen Zhao was an adult himself. Plus, in Europe and America, everyone had their own private lives. Chen Zhao could give him a call, but he couldn't interfere with Tiger's personal choices. Their previous contract had also been terminated. At the time, Chen Zhao felt that he was rich enough. He didn't need to suck blood from Tiger anymore. Ford's contract was the same, so Chen Zhao lost his last method to restrict Tiger. Chapter 2447. After thinking for a long time, Chen still decided to talk to Tiger. If this was in China, even neighbors would talk to you. But this wasn't China. Hey Tiger, do you have time? How about we talk? Teacher? Tiger clearly didn't expect Chen to call him. Subconsciously, he was still afraid of Chen. Teacher, I'm competing overseas. I don't have time. Fine. Chen's eye twitched. Tiger's intention to evade and lie was too obvious. Tiger, do you remember what I said? Teacher, what did you say? I can take back what I can give. Thank you for the reminder, teacher. Then Tiger hung up. Chen could feel Tiger's resentment. Chen didn't plan to talk about life principles with Tiger. He picked up his phone and searched for news about Tiger. Although the news might not be true, most of the time, it could explain part of the problem. In Tiger's mansion, a bespectacled, middle-aged black man in a suit walked over. Tiger, who's calling? I saw your face suddenly change after you answered the phone. Bach. Tiger raised his head and glanced at his manager. My former teacher. Oh, he asked you for money. Bach knew the world too well. After a person became rich, there would often be some inexplicable people who would stick to him and ask for benefits. No, he doesn't want money, but he wants to take everything from me. Tiger's face was clouded. Oh, who is he? He's the person who made me, Tiger said. I started my career under his guidance. He's really good. Tiger, you're the boxing champion, the first Grand Slam winner in the history of boxing. You're the strongest person in the world. No, you don't know him. He once beat a dozen people to death with his bare hands. Fear appeared on Tiger's face. Even now, he couldn't forget what had happened on the internet. More than 30 people had surrounded the two of them. But Chen had killed more than a dozen people and heavily injured them. To him, it was like a nightmare. Hearing Tiger's words, Bach couldn't help but frown. He scrutinized Tiger. Could Tiger do it? With the strength he had displayed in the arena, it would probably be very difficult for him to do so. The corners of Bahi's mouth curved upwards. Tiger, I have something good for you. Something good? What? Tiger turned and looked at Bach. He knew that Bach's hands were not clean. When his agent found out that he was in contact with Bach, he had warned him. However, compared to his former agent's style, Tiger clearly preferred Bach. It was not only because of Bach's request for a lower share, but also because of Bach's ability and means. For example, in a previous match, his opponent was a boxer who was equally strong. At the time, Tiger had studied the opponent's match recordings several times. Even he wasn't confident that he could beat him, but no one knew what Bahi had done. His opponent was glaring at him with rage and hatred. However, he didn't retaliate despite being beaten. Although Bahi did not say it clearly to him, he could feel that Bahi must have used some means outside of the arena. Of course, winning that match so easily made Tiger forget about Bach's tricks. But that didn't mean Tiger trusted Bach completely, especially when Bach offered something good. Tiger became wary. Bach chuckled and took out a small bottle of medicine. What's this? A stimulant? No, it's not a low-end medicine like stimulants. Bach shook his head. It's called the devil's medicine. It can greatly increase your strength. Not just temporarily but permanently. Bach, I don't want to be banned. Haha, I can't detect it with my current methods. Can't detect it? Tiger raised an eyebrow and looked at Bach suspiciously. Bach nodded and said with certainty, absolutely not. I'm your agent. How can I let you be banned? How much? Tiger was tempted. It's free, Bach said. Free? How is that possible? Tiger didn't believe that Bach would give him something like this without reservation. As long as you do me a small favor, I'll give it to you, Bach said with a smile. What favor? Help me fight a match, Bach said. You're my agent. Can't you arrange it? It's not a regular match. Underground boxing. Tiger asked in shock. Yes, it's an underground boxing match. Tiger was silent for a moment. He looked up at Bach. Are you sure this thing has no side effects? Of course. I won't joke around with the greatest client I've ever worked with in my career. Tiger thought about it. It was just as Bach said. If he was banned, his loss would be the greatest, but Bach's loss wouldn't be small either. When is the match? Tonight. Why the rush? Don't you want to try the effect of this medicine? It'll take effect today. The effect of this devil's medicine is more perfect than you think. Tiger took the devil's medicine and hesitated. But in the end, his desire won over his rationality. Inject or take it? Take it. Can I take it directly? Of course. Tiger twisted the cap and sniffed. There was no smell. After hesitating for a few more seconds, he drank the entire medicine. After the medicine entered his stomach, Tiger felt a burning sensation in his abdomen. The burning sensation was spreading to his limbs and bones. Drink. Tiger let out a low growl. Surprise flashed in Bach's eyes. He'd seen others use the devil's medicine before. The pain produced during use could almost be described as unbearable. But Tiger didn't seem to be in too much pain. He seemed to be able to endure it. Tiger's breathing became heavy. He even spat out white gas. His muscles swelled like balloons. The veins under his skin bulged. Tiger gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. It wasn't a good feeling. His bones cracked. Tiger roared and threw a punch at the wall behind him. Tiger's fist embedded into the concrete wall. When he retracted his fist, there was a bowl-sized hole in the wall. Cracks spread around the hole. Chapter 2448. Tiger did not want to believe his eyes. He had punched a hole in the wall. The wall was made of concrete and steel, not to mention fists. Even a hammer might not be able to penetrate it. But now, he could punch a hole in it. Was this the effect of the devil's potion? It was unbelievable. Tiger felt like he could beat anyone now. Bach was surprised too. He did not expect Tiger to be so compatible with the devil's potion. He also knew the effects of the devil's potion. At the moment, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that he could break an adult bear's neck if he fought it. Tiger looked at his fists. He had never felt so confident before. Even against Chun Zhao, he had the courage to say no. What time is the match tonight? What? You can't wait anymore? Bach was satisfied with Tiger's excitement. I feel like I can kill a lion. What an intoxicating power. Night fell. Tiger and Bach set off together, heading to the underground boxing arena. But as soon as the car drove out of the gate, a figure jumped out and blocked their way. Tiger and Bach were both shocked. They took a closer look. Wasn't the person blocking the car Tiger's previous opponent? Tiger remembered that the man was called Hinga. Syndicate was also black. He was taller than Tiger, but he was slightly more slender than Tiger. Bach got out of the car. Hinga, do you want to die? Bach, you said that if I lose to Tiger, you'll give me money, Hinga said directly. My daughter needs surgery, but you haven't received the money yet. Bach sneered at Hinga. I don't remember saying that. You fucking bastard, you lied to me. Furious, Hinga accused Bach. Fuck off, or I'll call the police. Bach looked at Hinga in disdain. I'm going to tell the media. Not only did you make me fight in an underground boxing match, but you also threatened me with my daughter's life. A cold glint flashed across Bach's eyes. It was not his first time making his client fix a match. In the past, people had tried to threaten him with this. But now, he was still standing here safe and sound. As for the people who threatened him, they had all disappeared. No one has ever dared to threaten me. Do you know where the people who wanted to use these things to threaten me ended up? Bach's glasses flashed with a cold light. Syndicate was actually afraid as well. He had long heard of Bach's reputation in the circle. Notoriety is not enough to describe his badness. Just then Tiger got off too. When Hinga saw Tiger, his eyes flashed with hatred. Tiger smiled. Bach, let me handle it. You? Bach was disappointed. How was Tiger going to deal with him? Tiger walked up to Hinga. I don't care what happened between you and Bach, but I'm willing to give you a chance. What opportunity? Let's have a fight. If you win, I'll ask Bach to give you the money. When? Where? Sim wasn't afraid of Tiger at all. He felt that Tiger was just a fake. Otherwise, his agent would not have looked for him that day. and asked him to cooperate with the fake fight. Right here, Tiger said coolly. Tiger crooked his finger. If you can beat me, you can get the money. That's what you said. Yes, that's what I said. Tiger twisted his neck. Tiger, you still have a fight later. I know, Tiger said confidently. That's why I need to warm up. Hearing Tiger's words, Hinga was furious. I'm actually just a warm-up for him? He was looking down on him too much. Hinga had already gotten into position. Come on. Let me see where your confidence comes from. Tiger quickly stood in front of Hinga. Let's start. Zinga threw out a left uppercut with a heavy swing. Got it. Hinga was very confident in his attack. Tiger was too arrogant. He actually did not block at all. Indeed, Hinga's prediction was right. His left hook landed heavily on Tiger's chin. But Tiger did not move at all. Instead, it was Hinga. He felt like his fist had hit an iron wall. Too weak. You're too weak like this. Tiger shook his head. Hinga's expression changed. He hurriedly retreated into a defensive position. The feeling Tiger gave him now was completely different from last time. Last time, in the ring of an official match, he had been prepared to lose. But Tiger's attack, defense, strength, speed, and technique had not made him feel pressured at all. In the 7th round of the half-real, half-fake match, he purposely showed an opening and was KO'd by Tiger with one punch. But now, Tiger gave him the feeling that he was an insurmountable mountain. Tiger attacked. It was a devastating punch. It hit Hinga's arms in front of him first. Crack. In an instant, the bones in Syndicate's arms and hands were like broken pieces of wood. But Tiger did not stop. The terrifying power landed directly on Hinga's face. Syndicate's entire body flew a few meters away and fell to the ground, completely unconscious. Bok, are you going to kill his mom? Tiger asked unconcerned. Bok was about to say kill him. Suddenly, he saw light behind the flower bed across the road. Don't mess around. There are paparazzi, Bok said in a low voice. Let's go. He's lucky. Tiger spat and got into the car. The next day, almost all the media was reporting about the private fight between Hinga and Tiger at night. Hinga was still lying in the hospital, but he still claimed that Tiger and his manager had asked him to fake the fight. But no one believed him, because a paparazzi had recorded the scene of the two of them fighting last night. Tiger was clearly much stronger than Hinga. They could not understand why Tiger would ask Hinga to fake the fight. So, even though Tiger had injured Hinga, more people were willing to support him and believe in him. On the other hand, Hinga had become the target of everyone's hatred. The media made him into a scoundrel and villain. Because he lost the fight, he blackmailed Tiger and used fake news as an excuse. Then he was beaten to the ground by Tiger, which proved his point of view. Chen Zhao watched the news report. He picked up his phone and called West. West, help me investigate someone's identity. Oh, okay. President, who do you want to investigate? A man called Sinka, a heavyweight boxer. He's also the guy who made a lot of noise in the news today. Chapter 2449. Mr. Hinga, I'm representing Mr. Tiger. I'm sending you a lawyer's letter. Because you've spread inappropriate comments, my client has suffered great harm and financial loss. So Mr. Tiger has filed a lawsuit and asked for $3 million. Tiger's lawyer said arrogantly. In his eyes, Hinga was a loser, a joke. Hinga had overestimated himself and fought Tiger. In the end, both in the ring and in terms of influence, he'd been defeated by Tiger's absolute strength. Bang! Suddenly, the door to the ward was pushed open. Both Hinga and Tiger's lawyer froze when they saw an Asian man walk in. Chen Zhao glanced at Tiger's lawyer, and then at Hinga. He's your friend. No. Who are you? Hinga didn't understand the situation. Judging from how Chen Zhao had pushed the door open, he seemed to be here for trouble too. Just like this morning, when a fan of Tiger had rushed into the ward to insult him. Chen Zhao didn't answer Hinga's question immediately. Instead, he looked at Tiger's lawyer. You can scram now. Who do you think you are? Yellow-skinned monkey. Slap. Chen Zhao slapped Tiger's lawyer, knocking out 2 of his front teeth. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to jail. Tiger's lawyer was still roaring fearlessly. Just then another voice came from the door. Ysef, are you going to sue my boss? Ysef looked up. When he saw Alex, he couldn't help but shiver. She was the queen of the largest law firm in California, and the lawyer with the highest winning rate in America in the past decade. Of course, she was also the most expensive lawyer. With a 95% chance of winning, it could be said that it was a nightmare for a lawyer to face Alex in court. Moreover, Alex had the most professional team of lawyers. What frightened Witherspoon the most was what Alex had just said. She didn't call Chen Zhao a client or client. She called him boss. The two were completely different. Is there a way to revoke his lawyer's license? Chen Zhao asked calmly. As you wish, boss. Alex didn't seem to mind either. Give me some private time with Mr. Hinga. Not long after, the ward was cleared. Of course, when they asked Witherf to leave, they still asked for the hospital's security. Syndicate vaguely realized why he was transferred to this hospital. He even arranged a luxurious ward for him, and arranged for a professional doctor to treat him. It was very likely that it was arranged by this Asian. Chen Zhao pulled over a chair and sat before Syndicate's bed. Your daughter is also in this hospital, and she has already found a matching heart. She can undergo surgery in 3 days, and the surgery fee has already been paid. The best heart transplant specialist in California will be in charge of this surgery. I can't guarantee that the surgery will be a success, but as long as you can think of a reasonable request that can improve the surgery, you can tell me. Chen Zhao said, the best heart transplant specialist in California will be responsible for this surgery. Hearing that, Syndicate knew that there was no free lunch in the world. Chen Zhao hadn't discussed this with him beforehand, but he couldn't refuse the offer. He, Tiger, and Bach were in a heated argument. Their ultimate goal was to raise money for his daughter's heart transplant. What do you need from me? Take a look at this contract. It was an investment contract. It was the one that Chen Zhao had signed with Ford and Tiger. However, this contract was more complete than the previous one. After all, Chen Zhao's legal team had helped draft it. At the same time, the terms were even harsher. If Syndicate broke the contract, he would either have to become a miner in Africa or sleep on the streets for the rest of his life. Where's the pen? Syndicate asked. Didn't you discuss the contract's content with me? I can't find a reason to refuse. My daughter's surgery costs $300,000, and then you have to pay for my treatment, rehabilitation, nutrition, and the cost of hiring a rehabilitation coach, fitness coach, and professional boxing coach. The total cost is even higher than my daughter's surgery. What's more, my attending doctor told me that my arm's bones were destroyed, and my arm's nerves were severely injured. That is to say, for a long time in the future, or even for the rest of my life, I won't be able to return to the ring with my hands, let alone return to the boxing ring. In your contract, as long as I haven't fully recovered, you have to pay me $20,000 a month. That is to say, even if I don't do anything, I can live a very comfortable life every month. I don't understand why you would refuse this contract. Chen Zhao tossed a pen to Syndicate. Syndicate picked it up with his trembling right hand. However, he couldn't even hold the pen steadily. You saw it too. Are you sure you want me to sign this contract now? Chen Zhao nodded. That's why I came. Syndicate took a deep breath. He suddenly hesitated. He still couldn't figure out Chen Zhao's identity. He couldn't understand Chen Zhao's intentions. What exactly did Chen Zhao want to do? In the end, Syndicate couldn't resist the temptation of the contract. What do you want to do? Destroy what I once created with my own hands, Chen Zhao said calmly. I don't know what you mean. A year ago, Tiger was in the same situation as you. His arm was injured. He almost lost everything. His dreams, his future, and his hope. Chen Zhao's tone was a bit emotional. I gave him the same contract. I gave him a chance to stand on the stage of his dreams again, but he disappointed me. I once told him that I can take back what I can give him with my own hands. Xian Jia abruptly looked up at Chen Zhao. He vaguely remembered that when Tiger debuted last year, he would always say something like his teacher in every interview after he won a match. Every interview was the same. Now he suddenly understood something. But he also felt that Chen Zhao was too cruel to destroy the disciple he'd trained with his own hands. Syndicate didn't understand Chen Zhao. Now, Chen Zhao wasn't just disappointed in Tiger. He also hated him. Chen Zhao found Tiger's ex-girlfriend. They'd broken up long ago. Tiger, on the other hand, had given his ex-girlfriend severe physical and psychological trauma. Some of the damage was even hard to talk about. Chen Zhao vaguely remembered that when he'd first met Tiger and his ex-girlfriend, he'd sincerely wished them well. Now that he thought about it, it was so funny. Divine King of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2450. Mr. Tiger. With earth covered his face. He'd just received a lecture from Alex. She'd also told him how rich her boss was. At the same time, she'd told him the terrifying consequences of becoming his enemy. At the same time, she'd helped Chen Zhao pass on a message. That's what he said. Tiger's expression was cold. There was even a hint of fear. Can I take back what I gave myself? Bok glanced at Tiger. Tiger, he's not as scary as you think. He's in the past now. No, Bok, you don't understand. He's really scary. He's the devil. Tiger's tone became urgent. Did you know that he and I were blocked in the parking lot? They asked me to fake a fight. Then, with a smile on his face, he punched the people who surrounded us to death and crippled them. Tiger's tone became urgent. Then he still looked at me with that smile and said in a gentle tone, "If you disappoint me one day, then I'll take back what I gave myself." Tiger looked up at Bok. I once swore that I'd never disappoint him. I'd never face him with that smile. You didn't do anything. Bok said. Plus, he doesn't have evidence, right? Tiger smiled bitterly at Bok. Do you think he's the kind of person who needs evidence? Bok's expression turned cold. Since he doesn't want to reason with us, we don't need to reason with him either. Don't worry, leave this to me. Bok, don't use extreme methods. You'll anger him. Tiger, you don't understand me or my company. Bok patted Tiger's shoulder. You can be a big star without worry. No one can threaten my client. The more Bok said this, the more worried Tiger was. Chen Zhao had never thought that the big boy would become a real bad guy. Chen Zhao's impression of Tiger was still that of a shy, introverted boy who was always passionate about the ring and thirsted for victory. This change was too sudden. Chen Zhao was still in a daze. West had helped him investigate a lot of information about Tiger. Hiring prostitutes were a personal problem. Chen Zhao could ignore it. There was also the emotional entanglement between him and his ex-girlfriend, which could only be said to be a personal issue. Even if he beat up his ex-girlfriend, Chen Zhao would at most call the police instead of getting involved himself. However, he couldn't accept that Chen Zhao had gotten some information from his ex-girlfriend. That was no longer just a matter of touching the bottom line of morality. If it were in China, it would be enough to be executed several times. As the saying goes, men become bad when they have money. Tiger was the best example. To put it bluntly, he had become arrogant after becoming famous. Moreover, it was the kind that drifted too far. Chen Zhao felt that it was already too much for rich people to reveal their identities and throw a stack of cash at ordinary people. However, he had clearly underestimated Tiger. Tiger was completely different from Ford and Everly. Rufford's career had its ups and downs. But after meeting Chen Zhao, his career skyrocketed. Coupled with the environment he grew up in and the stability of his family, Rutherford's mentality had always been good. Moreover, he often communicated with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't have much to teach him in terms of technique. However, Chen Zhao could still guide him in terms of training and nutrition. Perhaps Rufford also got arrogant sometimes, but he could control himself. Everly was different. Her family background had always been extraordinary. She had received elite education since she was young. Now she was the most famous athlete in the sports world. It was just another way for her to succeed other than inheriting her family business. Thus her mentality was the best. She also kept in touch with Chen Zhao. Tiger was different. In the past he had felt inferior. Now he was as arrogant as he was arrogant. After being repressed for a long time, once a person found an outlet, they would go crazy. It wasn't that poor kids couldn't become rich overnight. If only someone had been able to guide them back then, Tiger wouldn't have become like this. However proud Chen Zhao was of Tiger in the past, he hated him now. Right now, Chen Zhao's mentality was, I raised him, so I'll destroy him with my own hands. Moreover, Chen Zhao wanted to destroy him in all aspects. Don't talk to Chen Zhao. He was still a kid. Plus, he could still be saved. He just lacked guidance. A mistake was a mistake. He could make other mistakes and still have a chance to redeem himself. But some mistakes couldn't be undone. Tiger had committed 2 unforgivable crimes. One was drunk driving and killed a mother and daughter. Then, to avoid responsibility, he let someone else take the blame. The husband of the mother and daughter's family hanged himself half a month later. At least, the police concluded that it was suicide. But Chen Zhao didn't think so. Tiger had been in frequent contact with gangs for a while. Therefore, the media often saw this kind of news. And the territory of the gang he was associated with happened to be near the neighborhood where the man who hanged himself lived. The second crime was that he had violated a woman. That night, the woman and her family were all buried in a fire. The first crime was from West's investigation, and the second was from a few words from Tiger's ex-girlfriend. Chen Zhao had also been to the scene of the fire. At the same time, he'd gotten the report from the fire station. The report showed that someone had indeed set the fire on purpose. But there were no clues about the suspect. Chen Zhao wasn't a judge, so he never needed evidence. Most of the time, judges didn't pursue justice but the law. But the original purpose of humans' creation of law was to uphold justice. In court, if a person was known to be guilty of a heinous crime, but there was no evidence to prove that he was guilty, could he not be sentenced? This was a philosophical question. Chen Zhao wasn't a philosopher. He couldn't explain whether he should uphold justice or the law. He only knew that he should do what he had to do. As the saying went, it was up to God to decide if you were guilty or not. Chen Zhao was only responsible for sending you to God. But one thing Chen Zhao was sure of was that Tiger couldn't see God. Just then Chen Zhao received a call. It was from a stranger. "Hello, is this Mr. Chen?" "Who is it?" Chen Zhao didn't like strangers who pretended to be mysterious. They would instinctively make others hostile, like Chen Zhao. Chapter 2451. I'm Madeko Pavich. How may I help you? Mr. Chen, can you please stop being a busybody? It's for the good of your former disciple, and for you and your family. You've investigated me, right? How much do you know about me? Huh? Madeko Pavich chuckled. Rich, very rich. What else? Seems like my investigation isn't comprehensive enough. There's still something I haven't found out. Madeko Pavich smiled, but he didn't take it to heart. But please understand that some power can't be compensated with money or the power behind you. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you can show me what power money can't compensate for. I hope you won't regret it. I'll say the same to you. Didi, after school, go home with your siblings, Chen Zhao informed Didi. Didala was the oldest of the kids, and he was a steady person. Chen Zhao trusted him. Uncle, we've been at school for a few days. You're only concerned about our safety today? Don't tell me you've made some new enemies recently? Asked Didira speechlessly. That's the essence of the word. Which warrior is it? To Didi, anyone who dared to go against his uncle was definitely a warrior, especially someone who dared to threaten his family. Even the word warrior wasn't enough to describe their bravery. He hoped that there would be no war in heaven. After informing Didira, Chen Zhao called West. West, what are Helis and Jalanash doing these days? Helis just came out of the Tower of Trials. She seems to have made some progress on level 4. She seems to have a good chance of passing it, West said. West said, Jalanash should still be in the city. She went shopping with Giselle. Where are they shopping? Beverly Street. Perfect. Tell her to go to Angel Beach. Someone might want to harm my family. I'm afraid that Failai will be in danger. Also, tell Helis to go to Mountain Elementary and secretly protect my kids. Guild leader, who is it? West immediately lowered his voice. I don't know yet. There's a guy called Madeko Pavich. I don't know his background yet. There are still a few kids at home. I can't leave, so I can only ask Jalanash and Halis to protect them. Guild leader? If we encounter an ambush, I can kill all the enemies, right? Of course, Chen Zhao replied. Okay, I know what to do. Helis hung up the phone. This basically gave Helith the power to fire as many times as she wanted. As long as he was judged as an enemy, she had the right to execute him. Normally, Chen Zhao wouldn't give him such authority. One reason was that Helith was even more murderous than Chen Zhao. On the other hand, Some people didn't necessarily deserve to die. However, this was a special time, because someone claimed to be threatening his family. At this time, there was no time to distinguish between death and death. As for Jalanash on the other side, Chen Zhao didn't even need to say anything. If a normal person forced Jalanash to attack Nash, Chen Zhao wouldn't even need to say anything. In that case, the result would be no different from firing limitlessly. If Jalanash's elemental magic hit an ordinary person, it would be like being hit by a missile. Kids, do you remember me? Sister Helith. Didala was the first to recognize her. Helith forced a strange smile with difficulty. Not bad, you still remember me. But Illich, Binance, Ferentia, and Kilo all remembered Helith too. He remembered this little sister, who was full of Gothic style. Helith's style was too obvious, and left a deep impression on them. But Hallie's was also the type that came with a lightning rod. Not to mention children. Even adults would automatically keep a respectful distance from her. Even when facing Chen Zhao's kids, Helith only smiled perfunctorily. Your uncle told me to take you home, Helith said. Let's go. Get in my car. The kids looked at Helith's car. It was an expensive Lincoln Navigator. But what really caught their attention wasn't the car's price. Instead, it was the super personalized paint on the car. There were 7 pictures. They were the 7 disasters: pain, disease, suffering, torture, plague, death, and despair. Each picture was fully integrated with the elements of death and terror. In particular, the paint used in some places was very special. It was a fluorescent coating. For example, the picture on the back of the car was the plague sermon. If someone shone a beam at Helith's car from the back, they would definitely see a strange scene. Hi, Feilai. Jalanash came to the Coastal Rescue Team's headquarters. Jalanash, why are you here? Feilai saw Giselle behind Jalanash and greeted her as well. Because she often went to the supernatural organization, she was basically familiar with the people there. The president asked me to protect you. Ah, is that necessary? I can't help it. As a spiritualist's family, I often get involved in some unnecessary trouble with my family. Jalanash shrugged helplessly. There were rules in the spiritual world that people might not be able to protect their family. But sometimes, it wasn't that people wanted things to escalate. It was just that things got out of control. Jolene, Nash, and Giselle sent Feilai home safe and sound. As soon as they got out of the car, Horace arrived in her cool and strange car. When they arrived, Chen Zhao had already prepared a scrumptious dinner in the yard. Everyone, including Giselle, was asked to stay for dinner. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't just ask them to stay for dinner. In the next few days, they would probably stay with Feilai to work and escort Chen Zhao's children to and from school. Chen, what's going on? Feilai asked at the dining table. Chen Zhao rarely arranged for people from the supernatural organization to protect his family. Chen Zhao told her about Tiger. Tiger? How did that kid become like this? President, if you need, I can send that guy to God for you. Chen Zhao glanced at Helith. No need. That's not my plan. It was very easy to destroy a person physically. For Chen Zhao, Helith, and Jalanash, it wasn't difficult at all. A spell could solve it. But Chen Zhao didn't just want to kill Tiger. It wasn't simply justice. It was revenge. Chapter 2452. A passenger plane landed at Los Angeles Airport. A dozen strangely dressed passengers walked out of the exit. They looked like they walked out of the Hogwarts Academy in the movie Harry Potter. Of course, the way others looked at them was as if they were cosplaying as Hogwarts magicians. They were already used to this kind of look, so they looked calm, and they responded to other people's requests to take photos with them. When they walked out of the exit, someone went up to them. Hamson, Mr. Medico Pavich, may the immortal king bless you. Among the group of Hogwarts mages, an old man looked at the person who greeted them. It's a pleasure for you to visit. Medico Pavich looked at Hamson Deller. They were all real mages. Although they did not come from Hogwarts Academy. But magic existed in this world. All kinds of unimaginable magic shocked Medico Pavich when he first came into contact with them. It was then that Medico Pavich came into contact with the group of mages from England and got to know them. They came from an organization called the Immortal Crown. an extremely ancient organization. But although they were ancient, they were very poor. And because of the lack of funds, their members dwindled, until Medico Pavic provided them with funds. Their precarious life was finally alleviated. Of course, Medico Pavic did not help them unconditionally. When Medico Pavic needed help, they would also need to help him solve any problems he faced. The group of mages, who had long been afraid of poverty, did not care about the rules of the spiritual world. Perhaps they did not realize that they had been controlled by Medico Pavic from the very beginning. Now they even relied on the money provided by Medico Pavic for their daily necessities. Of course, even if they realized this problem, they did not want to go back to the past. When Medico Pavic first came into contact with them, they lived in the depths of a forest that was rarely visited by humans. There were 52 of them when Medico Pavic unwittingly broke into their hideout. They were psychics who hid in the mountains to avoid World War II in the last century. Most of them were second or third generation, and a few were fourth or fifth generation. Initially, there were a few hundred spiritualists. However, after decades of reproduction, not only did they not grow stronger, but their numbers were also decreasing. It was mainly because they had too little contact with the outside world. Their daily necessities were basically grown and bred by themselves. Their only means of transportation was an old car from the 1930s. They had not been in contact with the outside world for decades. Their knowledge was seriously out of touch with the outside world. They had almost returned to primitive society before Medico Pavic had entered the forest in which they lived. Due to the lack of living resources and poor medical standards, they could only rely on magic to cure all of their illnesses. However, most of the time, magic could not cure all diseases. Take appendicitis, for example. In the outside world, a small surgery could solve the problem. But there, it was a fatal disease. They had no idea what was going on outside. They still thought that the outside world was still in an era of war. This kind of understanding was not only out of touch, but also a lack of knowledge. This caused them to be unable to survive alone even after Medico Pavic brought them out of the forest. Of course, another reason was that Medico Pavic deliberately made them think so in order to better control these magicians. All of their knowledge had already fallen behind decades of time. After all, the speed of development and changes in the past few decades were much greater than the development of human civilization in the past thousands of years. Especially since almost all of the first generation had passed away. Now there were not many of the second generation left. The incomplete inheritance of knowledge caused them to have an incomplete understanding of the outside world. As a result, they developed a sense of dependence on Medico Pavic. Medico Pavic easily controlled them. At least, most of the members of the Immortal Crown had become his servants. The older second and third generation were no longer willing to step out of their former seclusion. The fourth and fifth generation were even younger and more willing to see the outside world. Hamsun was the only second generation that came out with Medico Pavic. However, he was already very old. He was already 85 years old. In fact, he was already born before his parents lived in seclusion. Compared to the others, he understood the outside world better. Of course, he yearned for the outside world more than the others. So, he could be considered a first generation. His magic power was the strongest among the other magicians. Hamsun knew that Medico Pavic was using them. However, he did not care. Compared to the lack of resources and monotonous life in the seclusion, the outside world was much more interesting. There was also the guarantee of a stable life. Moreover, the tasks that Medico Pavic gave them were very simple. "You guys are really eye-catching," Medico Pavic said with a smile. "Although the outside world is much more interesting than the seclusion, I'm still more used to the robe of order." The magicians called their robes the robe of order. The robe of order was also a magic item that could provide them with magic power. Of course, for Hamsun and the others who had lived in seclusion for a long time, the robe of order gave them a sense of superiority. Perhaps due to the influence of the movies, when they appeared in public wearing the robe of order, they felt proud and honored. The fanaticism and adoration of ordinary people made them feel honored and proud. "What do you want us to do this time?" Hamsun asked. "Mr. Medico, Please give us some challenging tasks. A young magician of the fourth generation said with a somewhat arrogant tone. Yes, I hope this task can be a little difficult. At least when we travel, we will feel a little bit of pressure. Although I want to give you some challenging tasks, you guys are born extraordinary. Perhaps only saving the world will make you feel pressured. Haha, can you find us a task to save the world? Me too. But first, we need to live a better life before saving the world. Chapter 2453. Mediko Pavic let everyone into the car. Then he took out a stack of photos. These are your goals. Bring them all to me. There are a few kids here, Hampson said. After this mission, I'll provide you with at least a year's worth of funds. You should also have your own headquarters in the outside world. Don't you think so, Hampson? Hampson thought for a while and nodded. You're right. As for the question that made him hesitate before, after Mediko Pavic stated his conditions, it wasn't that important anymore. Rest for the night. Tomorrow, I'll give you more information about your goals. Finish the mission as soon as possible. Then you can have fun here. I've already prepared many projects for you. Mr. Chun, do you really have a way to help my arms recover their strength? Sinja asked hesitantly. Every time he asked his doctor when he would treat his arms, the doctor would reply that Chun Zhao would be in charge of his arms. All the attending doctors told him that Chun Zhao was in charge of treating his hands. They weren't in charge of treatment or examination. It seemed that the doctors in the hospital had blind confidence in Chun Zhao. He'd also learned from the doctors that Chun Zhao wasn't just rich. Not only was Chun Zhao rich, but he was also a doctor with incredible medical skills. Sinja didn't really want to believe it. Doctors could become rich, but they probably couldn't become very rich. At least this was his understanding. But then he thought of the contract Chun Zhao had given him. If Chun Zhao couldn't treat his arms, then the contract might cause Chun Zhao's investment to turn into a loss. Thus, Sinja was more willing to believe that Chun Zhao really had a way. Of course, hope was one thing, but reality was another. He was an athlete. He knew where the current bottleneck of medical technology was. He'd seen too many people in the same profession retire from the stage due to various injuries. For example, his current injuries. His arms felt like they'd been cut off. The neural networks in his arms had been cut open. There was technology to reattach arms, but it was similar to grafting or reconnecting a cable after it was cut off. If the cable was pulled with enough force, the reconnection point would definitely be the point where the cable was reconnected. The connection of the neural network was actually a regrowth, not a connection of the original neural network. This was also the reason why the arm and palm could not be as nimble as before even after the arm was reattached, even after rehabilitation training. There was also the fracture and reconnection of the bones, which was also unable to withstand the initial force. Because the crack had always been there, the nerve structure in the bones could not be completely repaired. Just because two pieces of iron were glued together didn't mean that they could become one. At least from a mechanical point of view, two pieces of iron were always two units of force, not one. Therefore, Syndicate had always been skeptical about whether Chun Zhao could cure him. Chun Zhao looked at the report in his hand. He already had a clear plan for Syndicate's treatment. He was no stranger to this. Tiger had suffered the same injury back then. The two were almost exactly the same. Physical healing methods and the perfect potion. In terms of physical treatment, it referred to surgery. I'll arrange surgery for you tonight, Chun Zhao said. Of course, if possible, he didn't want to operate at night either. But the hospital's operating theaters were full. Usually, it had to be arranged at least a week in advance before it could be arranged. Chun Zhao's request to use the operating theater was too sudden. Chun Zhao had a good relationship with the director and the major shareholders, but he couldn't delay the surgery of the other people he'd arranged. Therefore, it was arranged at night. This time could be squeezed out. Without this relationship, it would be difficult to arrange. How much can my hands recover? According to my plan, of course in the best condition. But when it comes to surgeries, no one can guarantee anything. Chun Zhao was confident, but it was too unrealistic. Therefore, Chun Zhao wouldn't give any promises. After arranging the things before and after surgery for Syndicate, Chun Zhao went to rest on a chair outside. Even a doctor wouldn't like the smell in the hospital, especially since he hadn't worked in the hospital for a long time. The chemical smell in the corridor stimulated Chen Zhao's sense of smell. Sometimes, having a sharp sense of smell was a burden. Just like animals, Chen Zhao had a new understanding of it. Since the evolution in the barren land, Chen Zhao's sense of smell had improved a lot. It still couldn't reach the super sense of smell of cats and dogs, but it still gave Chen Zhao a certain amount of trouble. If it was a normal smell, it would be fine. However, some smells were pungent. The pungent effect was also magnified by hundreds of times. For example, the smell in the hospital. Chen Zhao felt like he was soaking in a bathtub filled with medicine. Also, cats and dogs, for example, knew how to distinguish and block this kind of smell. But Chen Zhao didn't know. He couldn't block this sense of smell. Of course, while Chen Zhao couldn't block his sense of smell, his tolerance was stronger. He wasn't like cats and dogs, whose sense of smell would collapse after being sprayed with perfume. At most, Chen Zhao would feel nauseous. Plus, the pungent smell could be blocked. Breathing fresh air outside would make him feel happy. Of course, the happiest thing was that two people had come to relieve his pressure. The two people had come to relieve his pressure. Two young people wearing magic robes appeared before Chen Zhao. It was as if they were afraid that others wouldn't know who they were. In his hand was a wizard's magic staff, like those in the Harry Potter movies. "Sir, come with us." Chen Zhao raised his head and looked at the two young people. This pair of man and woman seemed to be a perfect match. "What's your name?" "I'm the immortal crowned Sark." "Arsini," the young woman said. Chen Zhao yawned. "Sit with me for a while." "Sir, we don't have time to waste with you. You better." Arsini pointed her staff at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out and snapped Arsenal's wand in an instant. "You." Arsini stared at her staff in shock. "Damn." Sark suddenly pointed the staff at Chen Zhao. Chapter 2454. Shapeshifting. Sark cast shapeshifting on Chen Zhao. Shapeshifting could be used on oneself or on others. Shapeshifting on others was very advanced, because one's own magic wouldn't resist oneself. But when used on others, there would be resistance. Even if one used it on a normal person, there was a high chance of resistance. As for using it on Chen Zhao's magic resistance had almost broken through the sky. His current magic resistance wasn't absolutely immune to magic. Basically, even an advanced spell wouldn't have any effect on him. Before Sark's magic could land on Chen Zhao, it had already dissipated into nothingness. Chen Zhao knew what was going on, but Sark didn't. Although he used shapeshifting, there was a certain chance of resistance. But he thought that his shapeshifting skill was almost perfect. Chen Zhao's resistance was just a coincidence, a result of luck. If a regular spiritualist mastered shapeshifting and cast it on a normal person, there was a 50% chance of resistance. But if it was Sark, he knew some tricks of shapeshifting. Thus, his shapeshifting had a 90% success rate on normal people. Just now, Chen Zhao had resisted shapeshifting because Sark had stepped on his shit. He felt that Chen Zhao wouldn't be so lucky the second time. If Chen Zhao knew what Sark was thinking, or if Sark himself had studied probability, he definitely wouldn't agree with Sark's opinion. It was like flipping heads and tails of a coin. In terms of probability, if you flipped heads the first time, it didn't mean that you would flip tails the second time. The probability of flipping heads the second time was still 50%. Shapeshifting. Chen Zhao still wasn't moved. "You missed again?" "Again shapeshifting." "Shapeshifting. Shapeshifting." Suddenly, Chen Zhao stood up and covered Sark's mouth with one hand. "Shh. Sit down, sit with me for a while, or I'll break your jaw." Chen Zhao looked at Sark. "Do you understand me? If you do, I'll let go." Sark nodded. But the moment Chen Zhao let go, Sark suddenly pointed at Chen Zhao. "Blind." "Pooh." Chen Zhao punched Sark's stomach. Sark was already kneeling on the ground, his body spasming slightly. Then Chen Zhao looked at Arsenal. Arsenal was too scared to move. These two were pure rookies. This was Chen Zhao's impression of them. Let's not talk about their strength first. At the very least, their reactions were too abnormal. Chen Zhao looked at the two. "Sit down, or I'll send you to the ward of this hospital." Both of them sat down obediently. "Were you sent by Madek Pavich?" The two of them remained silent. They seemed to think that this could negate the question. All right, I'll take that as a silent agreement. Do you know what a police officer's favorite way to interrogate a criminal is? Chen Zhao asked calmly. The two still didn't speak, but Chen Zhao chattered on. The police's favorite way of interrogation is to face two criminals, because for every question, if one of the criminals answers first, then his punishment will be reduced. In contrast, the second criminal's punishment will be increased accordingly. Chen Zhao looked at the two magicians who were sitting by his side obediently. He put his hands on their shoulders. So, next time when you answer my question, I hope you can be the first to answer. Sark and Arsenal lowered their heads, but they secretly exchanged glances. Clearly, they weren't going to cooperate with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao suddenly increased the strength of his hands. He grabbed their collarbones and pulled. Crack! With their screams, their collarbones were dislocated at the same time. Their left and right shoulders collapsed at the same time. You can refuse, but trust me. I'll make all your bones leave their original positions. Other than you, do you have any other companions? Chen Zhao asked. Crack, the two screamed again. There are 206 bones in a human body. This means that you can experience 206 dislocations. Sark and Arsenal's faces paled. They hadn't experienced much pain. They didn't know how to face pain. I'll ask again. Do you have any other companions? Yes. This time, it was Arsenal who answered. Good, Chen Zhao said satisfied. This is a good start. Arsenal. Sark screamed even more painfully than before. This time, Chen Zhao crushed Sark's bones. Worse punishment. How many of you are there? 18. This time, Shaq's team leader replied. Sark's betrayal was even more justified. Arsenal was the one who betrayed them first. They were two immature kids. This was what Chen Zhao had learned from them. Basically, in less than 10 questions, he had already figured out the color of their underwear today. West, come over to my side and bring two people back. Didn't you say that you'd let us go if we answered your questions? If you didn't force me to attack, I would have let you go, but you forced me to use violence. You lost your last chance. From the moment they'd appeared before Chen Zhao, he hadn't planned on letting them go. Only they'd naively believed Chen Zhao's words. They'd thought that Chen Zhao had really planned on letting them go. What a joke. These two were real information. With West in charge, he would definitely be able to obtain more valuable information. Why let them go now? It wouldn't be easy to find someone so easy to deal with. When they were sent to West's car, they wanted to resist again. But now, they didn't even have the strength to lift their wands. Chen Zhao acted as if he'd done something insignificant. Chen Zhao had also lowered Madaik Pavich's strength. He'd thought that Madaik Pavich was a person from the supernatural world. To his disappointment, Madaik Pavich was just a normal person. His personal development was also combined with Sark's and Arsenal's testimonies. It was obvious that he'd only developed after encountering the people from the Immortal Crown, and through their supernatural power. Every time he encountered a problem he couldn't solve, he'd ask the Immortal Crown for help. The Immortal Crown clearly relied on Madaik Pavich's funds. The Immortal Crown had been established after spiritualists who'd been living in seclusion came out. Their foundation was too shallow. One could even say that they had no foundation at all. They weren't like those more successful organizations who'd found a suitable direction after adapting for a long time. Secondly, the Immortal Crown's strength. They actually had about the same number of members as the supernatural organization, but their individual strength was a mystery. Even Chen Zhao couldn't tell what Arsenal and Sark meant by powerful. Chapter 2455. Although Sark and Arsenal were very weak, they were still very powerful. To the higher-ups of the Crown of Immortality, they described them as terrifyingly powerful. It was said that those powerful magicians had been cultivating nonstop for decades. He didn't have any contact with the outside world, so his daily routine was either cultivation or cultivation. Because of this, Chen Zhao couldn't judge how powerful the Crown of Immortality was. So he told West to be careful. Hello Jalanash, it's me. Nar. Jalanash was sunbathing right now. She'd been with Feilai for the past 2 days. However, the past 2 days had been calm and peaceful. Nothing had happened. When Jolene and Nash had nothing to do, they would play on the shore or help Faylai out a little. If she met someone in trouble at sea, she would secretly use water magic to save them. Of course, she was still not used to the current pace of life. After all, she preferred to practice at the headquarters in the Tower of Trials. Although this kind of daily rhythm was very relaxing, but she couldn't be motivated. Jalanash was still surprised to receive a call from her sister. Nar, what's up? Can't I call you if there's nothing? If there's nothing, I'm hanging up, Jalanash said without hesitation. 2 years ago, she might have believed Nar's call. But in the past 2 years, she'd been on missions half the time. Many of the quests weren't straightforward expeditions that could be completed by simply A+1. In fact, many missions required Jalanash to work her brain and think. As time went by, Jalanash gained more experience. She couldn't say she was very experienced, but at least she could hear some suspicions when talking to her sisters. No, I'll tell you, Nar said quickly, sounding a bit depressed. Tell me what's up? Nar and Jalanash were sisters from the same clan. When they were young, they were like two big devils in the clan. Basically, wherever he talked about it, the chickens would fly and the eggs would be broken. So they were naturally close. But they hadn't contacted each other in the past 2 years. It wasn't because they weren't close. It was because Nar had become the focus of the clan and had been cultivating in seclusion. That was why they never contacted each other. Unlike Nar, Jalanash's talent was mediocre in the clan. That was why Jalanash left the clan as soon as she came of age. The elders in the clan did not object to her going out. After all, even if Jalanash didn't leave on her own, she would probably be chased out by the elders of the clan soon. On the surface, it was said that he was going out to gain experience, but in reality, the underlying meaning was that he did not want to keep idle people. When Jalanash received Nar's call, her first reaction was that Nar had come out of seclusion. However, from her tone, it seemed like there was something else. Jocelyn Nash, I missed you, so I decided to come and play with you. There's nothing fun here, Jalanash replied lazily. No, I know you're in Los Angeles. Everything is fun there, Anair said firmly. LA is fun, but do you have money? Jalanash went straight to the heart of the matter. You've been out for 3 or 4 years. You should have some money, right? You must have saved up a lot of money. My money isn't for you to squander. Jalanash had been planning her own house recently. She had saved up quite a bit in the last 6 months. She saved at least half of her salary every month. She had also become a little miser. Plus, while her salary was high, and she was of the highest class in the supernatural organization, her expenses were also high. However, her expenses were also very high. Although the association would provide some of the magic materials needed for training, there were still many that she had to collect herself. Moreover, as her strength increased, the expenses she needed to spend would also increase. Inaar was the opposite of her, because his family was much better than Jalanash's. That was why she had no concept of money since she was young. Did Uncle Owens come too? The Uncle Owens that Jalanash mentioned was Inaar's father. No, I don't want to talk about him. You fought with Uncle Owens. I ran away from home. If he doesn't take me in, then I'll really be homeless. Jalanash couldn't help but worry. She wasn't worried that Inaar would really be homeless. She was worried that there was no one around her. Who knew what she would do? Inaar, where are you now? Guess. Suddenly, Jalanash felt a familiar magic wave around her. Jalanash bounced up from the beach chair and looked behind her. Hi Jalanash. Jalanash finally found Nar. Inaar was much shorter than Jalanash. She looked less than 160 centimeters. She looked like an underage girl with a baby face. In fact, she was the same age as Jalanash. She just had a different birthday. Nar, how did you know I was here? Jalanash looked at Nar, who was bouncing over. Because we're sisters. We can communicate telepathically, Inaar said proudly. Jalanash didn't believe her. You know detection spells? Jalanash asked, looking surprised. Because all of her race practiced elemental magic. It wasn't that there were no other types of magic, but they were at least very rare. On the other hand, detection magic was a more advanced type of magic. She doubted that Inaar would learn this kind of magic. Or would her race let her waste time on other types of magic? No, guess again. I can't. Jalanash wasn't interested in guessing anymore. I've activated the bloodline, Anair said proudly. Nar said proudly. Now, as long as I want to, I can find the location of everyone who has the blood of our race flowing in their veins. Huh. You've really activated it? Does our race really have such an ability? Jalanash knew about it. It was called kindred inheritance in the race. But she doubted if such an ability really existed. In fact, it wasn't just her. Most people in the race doubted if such an ability really existed. Yes, I'm the only person in the past 300 years who has awakened the kindred inheritance ability. Oh, that's nothing to be proud of. After all, this ability can't increase one's strength. Who said it can't? My magic power is more than 10 times stronger than before. It's easier for me to communicate with the elements. I only need half of my magic power to release a spell of the same level. Oh, that's not bad. Not bad. In your words, it's not bad? Nar said loudly. I'm at least in the top 10 in the race. My dad said that I can become the most powerful elemental mage in the race in 10 years. Chapter 2456. Jalanash wasn't the little girl from 10 years ago who would argue with Nair endlessly. She only laughed at Nair's arrogance. Nor did Nar continue to discuss the issue with Jolene and Nash. Is there a shopping street here? Yes, it's over there. I'm not talking about the ordinary ones. I'm talking about the high-end ones. If you want to go to Beverly Hills, I can find you a guide. Come with me and pay for me, Wang Yao said. Jalanash rolled her eyes. I'm on a mission. Mission? Now. You. Nar looked at Jalanash, who was only wearing a swimsuit, shorts, and a sun hat. Was she on a mission? What mission are you on? Protector, Jalanash said. It's okay. It's okay to go away for a while. I can just reject this mission. Am I not as important as a mission? Nair shook Jalanash's hand. Jalanash glanced at Nair. She was considering if she should tell her the truth. In Jalanash's heart, this childhood playmate was indeed a good sister. But she had to give up the mission just to shop with her. This was definitely impossible. If you stay in Los Angeles long enough, after I complete this mission, I can apply for a few days off to play with you in Los Angeles or the surrounding cities for a few days. But I can't just give up my current mission. Jalanash, you don't love me anymore. Nair hugged Jalanash, acting like a spoiled child. Don't do that. I need to focus on the mission. Fine. Who's your client? Not my client. My boss's wife. Is she a spiritualist? No, she's a regular person. So troublesome. How about I kill your boss and you'll be free? This joke isn't funny at all. Jalanash knew that Nair was joking, but she couldn't laugh at all. If Chen Zhao heard this, he would probably die. If Chen Zhao heard this, he'd slap Nair onto the wall. Although he hadn't seen Nar for a few years, her personality was still the same as a few years ago. Perhaps the days of closed-door training were too harsh. As a result, after Nar came to Los Angeles, he became even more self-indulgent. Nar, don't casually use magic in Los Angeles, especially on ordinary people. It's very dangerous here. What kind of danger is there in this magical desert? Nar said indifferently. If you continue to have this kind of attitude, then I can only tie you up and throw you into the clan. All right. Nair had compromised, but she didn't believe that Jalanash could kidnap her. She was just worried that if she pissed off Jolene Nash, she wouldn't be able to play with her. However, she was still stubborn and unruly in her bones. But Jalanash still arranged for Nar to go shopping. Nal said that he only wanted to go to Beverly Hills, but when he went to this ordinary commercial street, he still couldn't help but linger. After all, even if this was just an ordinary commercial street, it was still much more lively than the clan's gathering place. However, Nair had spent more than $2,000 in one afternoon, which still made Jalanash's heart ache. Even if she went shopping in Beverly Hills, she might not even spend $2,000 in a day. When Nair came back, she was already carrying more than 20 shopping bags. Women had a natural obsession with shopping. Jalanash, look at what I bought. Look at this pair of earrings. It's only $50. It's so worth it. Jalanash looked at the exquisite box that Nair took out. It was a pair of silver earrings. Most of the time, such silver jewelry wouldn't cost more than $20. This made Jalanash feel that she had to send her home as soon as possible. Just then Phalai walked over. Phalai had already changed back into her own clothes. Jalanash, is she your friend? Phalai, are you off work? Jalanash looked at Phalai and then at Nair. She's my sister, Nair. She just left home. This pair of earrings is so beautiful. Which store did you buy it from? At this moment, Phalai displayed her high EQ. You think it's beautiful too, don't you? Nair immediately liked Phalai. She felt that her beauty sense had been recognized. To her, this was the greatest affirmation. Of course, it's very beautiful. How about we go shopping? I want a pair of earrings too. Jalanash wasn't stupid. Phalai's attitude clearly showed that she wanted to build a good relationship with Nair. Otherwise, why would she want to buy such jewelry? Phalai wasn't allowed to wear jewelry during work hours. Moreover, her jewelry was basically all high-end goods. Even if she went to events with Chen Zhao, she would only wear jewelry that cost tens of thousands of dollars or more. Phalai and Nair looked like mother and daughter. It wasn't because of their age or appearance difference. It was because of the difference in their intelligence. Because she was shopping, Phalai missed dinner time. However, Phalai had already called Chen Zhao. The three girls had a lot of fun outside. Then, Jalanash sent Phalai to her house and took Nair back to her place. Wow, Jalanash, is this your house? When did you buy it? It's so beautiful. I rented it, not bought it. Jalanash rolled her eyes. Such a luxurious house must be very expensive, right? Jalanash covered her face. I'll prepare daily necessities for you. When they were at Mingyue Villa, Nair had also made a big fuss as if he hadn't seen the world. Now that he saw his house, he also made a big fuss. Nair, your house is so many times bigger than mine. Do you have to be like this? I don't want to talk about that rundown house. I feel like I'm moldy after living there for so long. Actually, Nair's house was far from rundown. It was a manner that wasn't inferior to Mingyue Villa. Of course, Nair's main criticism was that the style couldn't keep up with the times. Most of the decorations were designed and built in the early 19th century. Girls like Nar, of course, preferred modern-style interior decorations. Jalanash was similar, perhaps influenced by Chen Zhao's two manners. Jalanash's taste was more modern. This villa was rented by her, but her plan was to buy a villa that belonged to her. Or she could buy a piece of land and build her own house like Chen Zhao. Chapter 2458. Even though Four knew that Chen Zhao was joking, she still left. Syndicate also thought that Chen Zhao was joking. However, he was in a good mood right now. Even though his arm hurt a lot, the more painful it was, the happier he was. Anesthetics could reduce the pain, but he enjoyed the current pain more. Only pain could make him feel the existence of his arm. For example, he had broken bones and damaged nerves. If he lost his sense of pain, it would be like losing his arm. But when he saw the set of silver needles, Syndicate still shivered. He'd heard of acupuncture before, but he didn't believe in it. Comparatively, he was more willing to believe in Western medicine. But Chen Zhao wasn't discussing it with him. Soon Syndicate's arm was filled with silver needles. Each needle contained a sliver of life force. At first Syndicate resisted, but as the life force seeped into Syndicate's arm, he felt the pain in his arm gradually disappear. It was replaced by a strange feeling of comfort. It was a very special feeling. Chen Zhao moved quickly. After all the life force of a needle flowed into Syndicate's arm, he immediately took out another needle. After replacing hundreds of needles for Syndicate, Chen Zhao finally stopped. Then he put the needles away one by one. After finishing, Chen Zhao started applying medicine to Xian's wound. Syndicate didn't feel any pain anymore. His fingers seemed to have recovered their usual nimbleness. Mr. Chen, when will my injuries heal? Syndicate finally stopped doubting Chen Zhao's abilities. 2 days, Chen Zhao said. Hearing Chen Zhao's answer, Syndicate felt strange. On one hand, he felt that his injuries were almost healed. On the other hand, he doubted whether 4 or 5 days could really help him recover. Chen Zhao already had a plan for Syndicate's treatment and recovery. The most troublesome part of the surgery was already done. So the next step was recovery treatment. On the other hand, recovery healing was dispensable. If he wasn't in a hurry, Syndicate could completely recover in a month, even if he stopped treatment now. But Chen Zhao clearly didn't want to wait a month. That was why he used life force to treat Syndicate. In other words, I can see my daughter in 2 days, right? Yes, but she's currently isolated in a sterile ward. Other than specialized nurses, no one else is allowed to enter the sterile ward. Hinga's daughter is different from Hinga. Although Syndicate's injuries were severe, they weren't fatal. His daughter, on the other hand, had a heart transplant. On top of that, she was still young, her body was weak, and her resistance was much weaker than that of an adult. Therefore, they couldn't let outsiders enter the ward at this time. I understand. Although Syndicate was grateful for Chen Zhao's treatment, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Chen." However, he went to the market more because Chen Zhao had helped his daughter. There's no need. This was because in the past, there might have been a large area with no magic. Perhaps this place would never have a spiritualist set foot here. But in this era, as long as there were people, there would be spiritualists. There was a large flow of people in every region, and the mobility of spiritualists had also increased. It was no longer difficult to find another area with no magic. It was completely impossible. That was why Hamsun decided to develop in North America. Naturally, North America had to choose a city with the best economic conditions. In North America, Los Angeles, New York, and Washington were all very good places. At the very least, in terms of the level of development of the local area, even spiritualists would flock to these few internationally renowned metropolises. However, Washington was the political center of America. Coupled with the cautious attitude of the American authorities, it was difficult to allow an uncontrolled supernatural group to take root in Washington. There were also 2 or 3 large-scale supernatural groups in New York. If the Crown of Immortality went there, not to mention taking root, it would probably be expelled from New York. On the contrary, Los Angeles was unexpectedly suitable for Hamsun. Although the atmosphere here was a little bad, at least it gave him hope of developing and growing. If they relied on the marriage between spiritualists, the number of awakened descendants definitely wouldn't be enough. For example, when the previous generation lived in seclusion, there were hundreds of people. By the time the 5th generation came out, there were less than 100 people left. Therefore, people outside the group had to awaken and join to maintain the number of people in a supernatural group. Uncle Hamsun, we have 3 choices if we want to stay here and develop. Tell me about it. The first choice is to join the government, Manel said. Hamsun frowned. He didn't like to be in contact with the government. When they were in London, people from the government had taken the initiative to contact them, trying to make them part of the government. At that time, Hamsun had already considered it, but the people of the government gave them all kinds of intolerable conditions. That was the main reason why Hamsun planned to move. What else? A gang. We control a gang as a source of funding for the Crown of Immortality. It's risky, but as long as we hide it well, there's still room for maneuver. Hamsun wasn't very satisfied. Is there any other way? Find a businessman and become his helper, Manel said. But in order to provide us with sufficient funds and opportunities for development, we need a big businessman, Marnia said. Although the Crown of Immortality had chosen fewer than 100 people, their expenses were actually not small. Plus, their plan was to stay in Los Angeles, which would cost at least tens of millions of dollars. The more mana was consumed, the weaker he became. However, the magic array on the ground had already taken shape. A terrifyingly large arm pierced through the magic array. The arm slapped the ground beside Chen Zhao and used it as a foothold to prop up half of its body. Evil god of hell? Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at the evil god before him. The half-exposed giant didn't have the aura of hell on him. He wasn't a demon either. He definitely didn't come from hell. By now, Manuel was exhausted from overexertion. He was almost paralyzed on the ground. You're not wearing any clothes when you go out. Go back. Chen Zhao pressed down with his left hand. Instantly, the power of the world turned into a giant palm. It slapped the giant's head, who hadn't climbed out of the magic array yet. Bang! Half of the giant's body was smashed. Then the magic array disappeared. The minced meat on the ground also turned into specks of starlight and dissipated. Manuel's mouth gaped in shock. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Instantly, all of Manuel's hair stood on end. Creepy. Who exactly was this guy? He'd summoned the evil god of hell. But he couldn't even block one attack from this guy. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. This evil god of hell wasn't just famous. Even his strength didn't match his huge body. Other than being terrifyingly huge, he didn't have any other abilities. Chen Zhao had only planned to shove him back into the magic array with one palm. But the palm had smashed him into pieces. If this guy came from hell, and had strength that matched his size, he should be able to protect himself. Plus, Chen Zhao didn't even use his own strength in that palm. He'd only used a portion of the power of the world. With such weak strength, he'd been killed in one move. But thinking about Manuel's strength, it didn't seem like he could summon a creature that was too powerful. Chen Zhao had thought that the evil god of hell was similar in size to the abyss demons. Their strength should be similar too. But other than their sizes, there wasn't anything similar. Chen Zhao had thought that since Manuel could summon a powerful creature, the members of the association probably couldn't deal with his Uncle Hamson. But now, he realized that Manuel wasn't as strong as he'd imagined. Wes, come here. I caught another person who attacked me. He's also with that group. Wes heard Chen Zhao's words. He was speechless now. Chen Zhao was already speechless. At least his courage was worth praising. But couldn't the attacker be more powerful? Arsenal and Shaq's strength was simply an insult to others. Any random person from the headquarters could beat them up, let alone Chen Zhao. Including Aduz. Don't think that Aduz was weak as a guard. With Aduz's enchanted equipment, there was basically no monster in the Los Angeles area that he could not deal with. Of course, this was because the ignorant were fearless. Chen Zhao was probably the only one who knew how strong he was. Chen Zhao wasn't famous, so it was understandable that he'd come here to cause trouble. Wes felt that the person who came to pick a fight was a little weak. When Wes brought people over, he was shocked to see that Chen Zhao's car had been destroyed. Could it be that the people this time were very strong? He could actually destroy Chen Zhao's car? Looking at Manuel, who was in Chen Zhao's hand, West's expression turned serious. Chapter 2463. Mr. Manuel, you too. Shaq and Arsene Wenger were locked in two separate cells in the dungeon. When they saw Manuel being dragged down like a dead dog and thrown into the opposite cell, they couldn't help but be shocked. Manuel had just received a baptism of love from all the members of the supernatural organization. Everyone looked at him like he was a rare animal in the zoo. After a while they left. Not long after, another one came. Of course, this was only mental torture. The real terror came from the physical torture. The members of the supernatural organization all copied Chen Zhao's actions. Either they didn't attack, or they were extremely ruthless. When the police were interrogating someone, they might have to worry about leaving traces on the suspect. But they didn't have to worry at all. They were ruthless. Even if Manuel cried and begged to tell them the information. But his torturers were just torturing him for fun. As for the information, it didn't matter if they had it or not. Before Sark and Arsenal were sent here, they'd also enjoyed the full service of the supernatural organization. So they knew what kind of inhumane treatment Manuel had suffered. However, they couldn't do anything apart from looking at Marnia. Manuel lay on the ground for almost an hour. Only then did he slowly turn his head and look at Shaq and Arsenal, who were locked up opposite him. Mr. Manuel, how are you now? The two of you actually didn't die. Mana was somewhat resentful toward Shaq and Arsenal, because they'd told him all the information. This caused West and the others to torture him purely for the sake of torturing him. He'd suffered a lot of torture for no reason. Couldn't they leave some information for him to tell them? Arsenal and Sark were both embarrassed. They thought that their information had caused Manuel to be captured. Mr. Manuel, Manuel suddenly jumped up. Oh no, what's wrong? Uncle Hamson didn't just arrange for me. He also arranged for Dempus and Quince to do it. Evening, Angel Coast. By now, most of the tourists on the coastline had left. Only a few figures seemed to be packing up and preparing to leave. Alan had been sitting on a bench by the road. He held a drink in his hand and stared at the Coastal Rescue Team, HQ, silently. At this moment, Alan suddenly felt someone appear beside him. "Mr. Dempus, why are you here?" Alan turned around and saw that it was actually his elder. "Mr. Hampson saw that you didn't make a move after following him for a few days, so he asked me to come over and help you," Dempus coldly said. "Where is the target now?" "She's out," Alan said as he pointed in the direction of the Coastal Rescue Team. Phalai walked out of the Coastal Rescue Team. Just then Jalanash and Inar walked over. "Miss Phalai, are you off work?" "Yes, we can go back now." "Jalanash, someone's looking this way," Inar said. Jalanash raised an eyebrow. "Who is it?" "I don't know where they came from, but they are not weak. They are in," Nar said. "Don't point. Pretend you didn't find anything. Get in the car," Jalanash said. "Miss Phalai, drive the car to a remote place." "Jalan, you've grown a lot braver." Nar chuckled as he patted Jalanash's shoulder. "I still have you," Jalanash said calmly. "I didn't say I was going to help." "Fine, since I'm living and eating, I'll reluctantly help you this time." Jalanash wondered if she should look for a few detection and perception spells later. She actually didn't realize that someone was watching them at all. Then the three girls got in the car and left. Actually, they didn't need to drive to a remote place, because Minghua Villa was already very remote. According to Nar, the two people who were monitoring them had been following them. "President, we're on the way back to Minghua Villa. There's a car following us." Jalanash was confident that she could take care of the stalker alone. But just to be safe, she decided to inform Chen Zhao. "Ah, I know. Where are you now?" "We're about to enter the coastal highway. I'm at home," Chen Zhao said. "I'll come out now." Dempus, who was following them, saw that this place was already remote enough. "Speed up and knock over the car in front," Dempus said. Alan immediately sped up and chased after the car in front. "They're going to attack." Looking at the car behind them, Jalanash said, "They're speeding up. It looks like they're going to hit us." But just then, Phalai suddenly sped up. She was only driving an ordinary four-seater today, but it was still a luxury car. Its performance was much better than Alan's and Dempus's cars. Phalai didn't plan on letting the stalker hit the back of her car. After all, if she was hit, the repair fees wouldn't be small. "Can you open the sunroof?" Inar asked. "What are you going to do?" "I'll go up and give them a shot." Phalai looked at Jalanash beside her. Jalanash looked at Inar and asked hesitantly, "Are you sure?" "Of course, trust me," Inar said confidently. Seeing Inar's confidence, Jalanash still let Phalai open the sunroof. "Be careful. Don't fall." Nar, however, climbed out of the sunroof and stood on the roof of the car. "What's with that girl? What does she want?" Alan asked from the car behind. "She seems to want to attack us from so far away." "Then Don't worry, I'm here. I'll drive your car," Dempus said confidently. At this time, Nar, who was standing on the roof, had already started to release magic. Nar opened his arms and slightly spread them back. Then he took a deep breath. Dempus was still full of confidence. "Mr. Dempus, shouldn't we do some defense?" "No need. That girl is more than 30 meters away from us. No matter what magic it is, its power will be greatly reduced after hitting us. Also, she's young, so she won't be that strong. It's not too late for me to attack after she attacks. If we attack rashly now, we might make a mistake," Dempus said calmly. At this moment, Nar suddenly shouted and swung his arm forward. "Storm's breath." An elementalist?" Dempus raised his eyebrows. "But the lethality of wind magic is too small." But just as Dempus finished speaking, the car he and Alan were in suddenly bounced up. At high speed, the car suddenly rolled over. Chapter 2464. Under normal circumstances, Nar's breath of the storm couldn't flip a car. A small car weighed more than 1,500 kilograms. Flipping it over required a wind speed of at least 140 meters per second. Normal wind magic couldn't create such a wind speed. But nothing was absolute in this world. Nar was smart too. Dempus and Alan's car was in motion. Moreover, Nar used the leverage principle. She didn't release magic directly at the car behind her. After calculating the distance and speed of the car behind her, she released Breath of the Storm on the ground. When the Breath of the Storm landed on the ground, it formed an angular reflection, forming a local storm at a small angle. Just then the car behind came over. The local storm directly affected the bottom of the car. In addition, the inertia from the speed of the car behind made it much less force needed to flip it over. That was how the previous results came about. But what really flipped the car over was its own speed. Nar's Breath of the Storm was a guide. Even Jalanash was surprised. At that moment Qin Zhao, who was in the night sky, also exclaimed, "What a beautiful attack." He'd met that girl once when Jalanash had sent Feilai home yesterday. Because her magic level was at least half that of Jalanash, Chen Zhao didn't expect her to be so good at wind magic. After all, Chen Zhao had seen Jalanash use wind magic before. It definitely couldn't have such an effect. Just when everyone thought that the situation was settled, suddenly, the window of the car on the road was kicked open. Dempus climbed out of the car in a sorry state. There was blood on his forehead. He'd clearly been injured. Chen Zhao was surprised that he still had the strength to climb out. Under the perception of the small world, Chen Zhao realized that Alan's injuries were more serious. At least Alan had lost the ability to fight. Dempus looked angrily at the car that was gradually moving away. All of a sudden, Dempus' figure flashed as he charged out. Speed type. Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. So fast. Nar also realized that Dempus had caught up. Dempus was an extremely powerful strengthening type and speed type spiritualist. But Chen Zhao realized that Dempus' magic was different from Ingelite's. Ingelite had directly added magic to his body, but Dempus' acceleration magic was applied to his legs. His upper body did not speed up. In terms of speed, he was no match for Ingelite. However, this method of acceleration also had its advantages. Dempus could use other methods of attack while running. This was also an advantage that Ingelite did not have. Angelite's magic and bloodline were very simple. They only increased his speed and slightly increased his physical strength. Apart from that, he also had an attack method similar to Qin Zhao's fist shadows. However, this kind of attack was also based on physical effects, not magic. Dempus pointed his magic staff at the car in front. "Go to hell." The magic staff in Dempus' hand burst forth with a terrifying electric arc. "Oh no, turn!" Nar exclaimed. But at that moment, the terrifying electric arc was suddenly blocked by something. Nar couldn't see it clearly. He could only see the terrifying arc bursting out a strong curtain of electricity, more than 20 meters behind him. What's going on? Who was the one who used his body to block that guy's attack? Stop the car. The car did not stop because it was completely unnecessary. "No need," Feilai said. "We'll only cause trouble if we go." She knew that she was just a normal person. She'd discussed this with Qin Zhao before. When both of them were in danger, should she stay and face it together with Qin Zhao? In the end, the result was that if she stayed, Qin Zhao's chances of winning would be lower. Facing it together wasn't the best result. When there was a chance to leave the danger zone, Feilai should find a chance to escape first. "This is our president's private territory," Jalanash said matter-of-factly. "Do you think someone can attack Miss Feilai here? Was it your president who attacked us?" Nar asked. "Aren't we going to help your president? The guy who attacked us is really strong." "No need, Qin can solve the problem," Feilai said confidently. She didn't know how strong Qin Zhao was either. However, he was definitely stronger than the enemy who attacked them. The people of the supernatural organization had said more than once that Qin Zhao was one of the strongest humans in the world. Other than a nuclear attack, they couldn't think of any way to kill Qin Zhao. Of course, Dempus didn't know. Even if he did, he wouldn't believe it. However, his fearlessness and ignorance didn't change the result. With the obvious difference in power, he couldn't change the result no matter what he did. After 2 magic attacks didn't work, he immediately planned to escape. But his speed enhancement spell couldn't surpass Qin Zhao's speed. Qin Zhao easily blocked Dempus' escape route again. When Feilai drove the car into the underground garage, Qin Zhao was already in the living room. The 3 girls came to the living room. and saw Chen Zhao sitting with his legs crossed. President, is it done? Chen, where is he? Did you kill him? No, I sent him back to the headquarters. Is your HQ nearby? You're so fast. Nar looked at Chen Zhao in surprise. She'd only met Chen Zhao once. Yesterday, after sending Fei Lai back with Jalanash, they'd had dinner here. However, Chen Zhao was like a sloppy man at home. He didn't have the dignity of a superior, or the pride of a strong person. She thought that she was strong. However, the power that Dempus had displayed just now was hard for her to handle. She didn't expect Chen Zhao to finish the battle in less than 10 minutes. He'd also returned home first. Are you a speed enhancer? Sort of, Chen Zhao said. Speed is one of my strengths. You're not a pure speed type. No, my magic system is more complicated. Chen Zhao stood up. Let's eat dinner together. Nar realized that Chen Zhao's dinner was even more sumptuous than last night. There's so much food. Can we finish it with just the few of us? I just fought. I need to replenish my energy. Fei Lai rolled her eyes at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao ate so much every day. Just then, Helis brought the kids out of the elevator. Helis clapped her hands. Go wash your hands and eat. Yes, Sister Helis. Helis sat beside Jalanash. She didn't treat herself as an outsider here. Did you wash your hands? Chen Zhao glanced at Helis. Chapter 2465. Helis raised her palms. The aura of death flowed through her palms. President, do you need me to explain the principle of my purification? Forget it. Chen Zhao did not want to hear how the aura of death killed the microorganisms in her palms. Perhaps the microorganisms could not even survive on her palms. The children quickly hopped to their seats. All of them were excitedly talking about the interesting things they had encountered in school today. Helis, were you attacked? Fei Lai asked, concerned. No, Miss Fei Lai. Were you attacked? Helis could not help but ask, raising an eyebrow. The children immediately stopped talking and looked at Fei Lai. Auntie Fei Lai, were you attacked? What a pity. Why didn't we? I prepared a few spells to teach the people who attacked us a lesson. Why didn't they attack us? The adults at the table all had dark expressions. Apart from Helis, no one else thought that being attacked was a good thing. As for Helis, she had originally thought that this was the mission that Chen Zhao had given her, to look after the children. But now, she felt that she had to become a protector. And because she didn't encounter any attacks today, it made her very unhappy, very unhappy. Stanley, you didn't attack, right? Mr. Hampson, didn't you say to wait for Mr. Truman to come before working with him? Mr. Truman didn't come. That's good, that's good. If he contacts you, tell him immediately not to attack for now. Huh. Why? Mantle, Alan and Dempus all failed. We've completely lost contact with them now. Huh. Mr. Hampson, why didn't you contact Mr. Truman directly? I can't. Then could he already? No. Hampson knew Truman very well. In the third generation, Truman's magic talent and abilities were the most outstanding. Even Hampson himself was not confident that he could deal with Truman. However, Truman had a huge flaw. He had no self-control, especially when it came to drinking. To put it bluntly, he was a drunkard, a terrible drunkard. Most of the time, he would get drunk and delay his mission. Those juniors might not know, but Hampson understood Truman too well. After all, Truman was his direct disciple, and the student had surpassed his master. In the third generation, Truman was the youngest, but he was also the most outstanding. If he was given another 10 years to reach the average age of the other third generation, his strength would definitely be enough to kill him on the beach. Go to the bars and have a look. Maybe you can find him. Hampson thought for a moment and said, Forget it. I will get someone to divine his location. The current situation was somewhat out of his expectations. First, it was Manuel, and now, something had happened to his nephew. Then something happened to Alan and Dempus. One could imagine that their goal this time was not as simple as they had initially thought. Dempus and Manel's strength was at the top of the third generation, or even the entire immortal crown. But now they had lost contact with both of them. This caused Hampson to suddenly feel an unprecedented pressure. After all, this was not their home ground. He realized that the intelligence he had gathered earlier on was completely useless. All the spiritualists they had found and contacted had not told them that there was a local group that was not weak. In Hampson's opinion, this was not only not weak, but also very strong. Of course, Hampson did not know that most of the spiritualists active and making a living in the Los Angeles area maintained a certain relationship with the supernatural organization. When a foreign spiritualist or an organization came here, they would tell the other party most of the true information, but they would tacitly keep some information. The supernatural organization maintained a good relationship with the local spiritualists. Of course, those who were not on good terms were basically driven away. And for some local supernatural incidents, as long as it was a problem that could be solved by an individual, the supernatural organization would not interfere. At the very least, they had to leave some jobs for the individual spiritualists to support their families. This was also a manifestation of the prosperity of the area's supernatural world. If all the supernatural incidents were monopolized by one or two large groups, then the area's supernatural world would lose its vitality, and the supernatural organization would not only leave the individual spiritualists with the opportunity to complete missions, but also cooperate with them. And Hampson's helplessness also stemmed from their own immaturity. The crown of immortality had only been established for a short time. They spent most of their time in London. Therefore, they did not understand that when going to an unfamiliar area or city for information, most of the time, they had to go to the local supernatural organization instead of individuals. West, the guys who were caught, didn't they say where they were hiding? Helly's dialed West's number and asked. They did. Do you want to go alone? Yes. Actually, the president already knows, West said. He's just monitoring them now, but he hasn't done anything yet. He has his own plan. Hearing West's words, Helis was a little disappointed. She couldn't ruin his plan. She had indeed wanted to go and destroy the crown of immortality's hiding place alone. But she was still unhappy. Why was she not attacked? Was it because she was too strong? But she had not shown her strength. Plus, she hid her aura much better than Jalanash. Jalanash and Nash had been attacked, but why was she not? Was it because the other party thought that she could be easily dealt with? That was why she had purposely hidden in the dark and watched, only acting when needed. Help me tell the president that I want to be the main force when we attack the English. Okay, I'll tell him. West did not mind. Based on the information from the captives, he knew that the Crown of Immortality's people in Los Angeles were not weak. After all, they were an organization from Europe. However, they were at the bottom in Europe, while the Supernatural Organization was the strongest supernatural organization in North America. This was almost equivalent to a third-tier European football club going up against a first-tier Chinese football club. Of course, some of the people in the Supernatural Organization had already reached the level of a top spiritualist. In soccer, it was impossible for one person to fight against an entire team, but it was possible in the supernatural world. Nine Heavens Divine Emperor, that you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.